Welcome to AI in Motion, the podcast for leaders under pressure to do AI without breaking their teams, their brand, or their judgment. Hosted by Carol Lynn Jardine, Asma Stewart, and Megan Ratcliffe, co-founders of Clarity in Motion Collective, and operators building and leading with AI in the real world. Each episode brings you conversations with operators, CMOs, and builders navigating AI where it actually counts, inside real workflows, real organizations, and real constraints. What's working, what's not, and what it really takes to move from experimentation to impact. This is AI in Motion.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited today to welcome Camille Ricketts, who is the CMO and Operating Partner at XYZ Ventures. Camille, I just want to start by saying that your career reads like a front row seat to every major shift in marketing and tech over the last 15 years. From the Wall Street Journal to Tesla to building first round review to being employee number 11 at Notion to now writing checks as a VC. So before we dig into all of it, can you give us the quick version, how you tell your story when someone asks you what you do, and more importantly, how you got here?
Always start by saying that it was circuitous and that the through line only appears in hindsight to a large degree. I will say that the number one thing that has been continuous throughout each of the stops you described has been that I'm really a writer that has happened to trick a lot of people into believing that it is more than that. But the writing really has led me into storytelling, starting with being a reporter. My first job in marketing was at Tesla Motors, where we were helping craft the story before Model S even hit the market, that it was going to be possible, it was going to be popular. And then getting my real break at, I think, first round when it came to talking to the startup community and figuring out what it was that they really needed in order to start building these ambitious companies. And then just got so incredibly lucky. The honor of my career was being able to be at Notion during its very, very early days and then see it become what it has. And now just so thrilled to be working alongside the incredible team at XYZ to be navigating this new crop of companies that have a totally new set of challenges.
And I do agree that storyteller theme comes through so well in your career, and I think has been the cornerstone. I do think in the age of AI, storytelling and connecting with people and moving people through your story becomes even more crucial. Can you tell us what some of those lessons were from the Wall Street Journal and your time at Tesla that really helped you hone that storytelling aspect of your career?
I always thought I was going to be a reporter. I was the editor of my elementary school newspaper, junior high newspaper, high school, college newspaper. And so arriving at the Wall Street Journal felt like a very natural extension of what I had already been just excited about. But journalism teaches you how to be incredibly inquisitive, how to synthesize a bunch of disparate information into an understandable thesis for others, how to make sure something is entertaining and moves and, while it is still very dense with detail. So I just feel really, really lucky that that was my training ground. But then heading into Tesla, the discipline really became about how do you elevate the information that really matters to a particular audience. One of the things that really stands out in my memory there is that even though we were at the dawn of the electric car age, the story that we were excited to tell was a lot more about these cars being sexy and a lifestyle instead of necessarily talking about the environmental impact. So really figuring out who are you talking to? What motivates them? And make sure that the story really hits them in the right way. That was something that was all new to me and that I was really excited to gain there.
And then you moved on to first round review. You were basically with one other person, the architect of the first round review, which is amazing and was such an early content platform for VCs. And one thing that I think makes it so different was I think you were the first to start interviewing operators and getting their stories, having them share their tactics so that other founders could learn. It became such a popular approach. Looking back, what was the insight that drove you to follow that approach?
Yeah, so much of it was this understanding of audience. When I first arrived there, the task was to speak to as many founders in the portfolio as possible about what they felt was lacking from their current experience, what would actually be useful to them. We came along at this really ideal time when the only other voice in content marketing for venture was the Idrisin podcast, which obviously is epic. A lot of that was a platform for VCs to talk about their perspectives. And the founders that we were speaking to said, while that was helpful, they also wanted to learn from the people in the trenches building these companies brick by brick, particularly the ones that had some success and therefore had maybe some non-obvious insights to share about how they did that. A lot of that showed up as them saying, what I'd really love is if you could get me a coffee meeting with Stuart Butterfield, who at the time was the guy as Slack kind of moved up the ladder. And we said, we can't take coffee meetings with so many people, all the people he'd be doing it around the clock. But is there a way for us to scale that type of interaction where we go in, speak to him about the real nitty gritty and the weeds tactics that were useful during that path at Slack, and then bring that back and make it a really dense but entertaining piece of writing that for others to learn from?
Yeah, so smart and still a model. You also did an interesting tour at the US Digital Services Department during the Obama administration. And I just, again, so early, that was a model of using digital in campaigning, and would love to hear more about what you learned, especially from institutions that are usually not always open to change.
This was a very interesting detour in my career. Well, major kudos to First Round for giving me a sabbatical to go explore this that I felt like compelled to explore. I actually got pulled into it by a First Round colleague who had been running events and who I deeply loved. And she was, Camille, there's something really inspiring going on out here. She was there in 2015 to 2016. I got there October 1st, 2016. So literally like a month before the election. And the task ahead of me was, this election is going to take place. You seem like somebody who could come in and codify a lot of the practices that have made USDS so successful to date so that we can hand over a lot of learnings to the new administration to keep this going. USDS had been active for a few years at that point because they really got originated around healthcare.gov when that website popped up, and then obviously needed some support from Silicon Valley operators. And so it was really interesting to be literally a stone's throw away from the White House, constantly talking to these agencies about what it was where tech transformation could potentially make a difference for them. And then see this tiger team of people sort of parachute in and see what they could make possible within a lot of the constraints that already existed. And it was just like the most tenacious, most perseverant group of technologists that you could imagine.
And then the next chapter is Notion, which is such an interesting chapter. You joined, as you said, as employee number 11.
Yeah.
I think you were the first marketing hire. Is that right?
It was the first marketing hire. And this really extended from my time at First Round. So anybody listening, you just don't know where relationships are going to go. And so just like stay open. First Round had been one of the early investors in Notion. So I got to meet CEO Ivan Zhao really early on, and he got to know me really early on. And so when he decided that he needed a storyteller on the team, I was right there as the person he knew who did this, which is really one of the great gifts. And then plopping into this 10-person small office that was mostly skewed toward designers and engineering, and figuring out how to tell the story about a product that at that time was very beautiful, but kind of nebulous and just starting to be understood by the market. So a big storytelling challenge. And I'm so thrilled I got to be there for the next 3.5 years.
The cool thing is you had a lot of community already growing organically. And Notion is the poster child for product-led growth and how you all tapped into that community. And I would just love, because there's just a danger of disrupting it when the company actually gets involved. So I'd love to hear how you all thought about growing that community, growing the advocacy that was already organically happening, and the notion of product-led growth that resulted in?
Yeah. Well, first, to anybody who is thinking about, oh gosh, which company do I join right now, which I think is at the forefront of a lot of candidates' minds, the things that really drew me to that experience were A, just believing an insane amount in Ivan and feeling like a real kismet energy there. And then also, I would check Twitter every single day for the 2 weeks that I was in this consideration period about where to go, and just saw the number of people talking about Notion and tagging the handle increase literally day over day. So if you're looking for where there is gravitational pull and like general love, but then like stepping into that, the real task was to see this community, make sure that it did feel incredibly hands off and authentic. And like we were taking the folks who were obviously most vocal, most excited, and then just learning an insane amount from them. So it kind of dovetails with what I learned at first round, which is like first go to the source and be like, what can I actually glean from people's current experience? But we put our top 20 power users who we saw being vocal across all these social media channels into a Slack instance. Ben Lang, who was the head of community, who literally was my first hire, joined me like 2 weeks after I joined. We just buffeted them with questions. Just like, why are you so excited about this thing? How do you want to participate? If you were to keep this as a conversational space, what kind of conversations would you like to have with each other? What type of experiences would you like to have with each other? And just let them guide us initially. And so much of the early marketing language, early marketing initiatives was born out of us just getting our best fit customers together in a space and spending time with them.
Love it. You've also talked about how just go viral isn't a go-to-market strategy. I'm sure you hear a lot of founders say, I'm just going to go viral. And you're like, okay, so easy.
How can it not go viral? It's almost like your mandate was go viral, which is always a nightmare.
So knowing that it is a nightmare for the go-to-market leader listening and trying to build a product-led growth motion right now, I'd love to hear what your advice is, especially from your learnings at Notion.
Yeah, it's just that the most resonant voice is always going to be the voice of your customer, and that you should put that up there on the pedestal rather than spending a ton of cycles on what the brand account sounds like these days. All the algorithms across all the social platforms where you could potentially go viral are all oriented around individuals and not brands. They're all going to promote things from the founders, from the biggest fans. And so the more you can be thoughtful about sending energy in those directions, the better. And equipping more individuals inside of your company, building a deeper bench that can be out there, being talkative, representing the culture, teaching people how to get value out of the product, the better. And one thing I think we really benefited at Notion was being amateurs at all of that. To the extent that we were like, yeah, make your own tote bags at Hanoi. That sounds great. Use our trademark wherever you want. And it ended up being this incredible boon that we didn't give people a script or hold people to a certain expectation.
I think we try sometimes to have a chokehold over the brand rather than have your customers help you develop what it is and what it could be. That is such a great story. Tote bags at Hanoi.
Very famously, Ivan does not love the color green, which can be controversial. He just is like, it just doesn't go with anything. Inside of a software content, he's literally once said, it's okay for trees to be green, but in software, it's just not, it doesn't match. I really understand what he's saying now, having been so experienced in developing that brand with him. But then we would see community members like come out with their own Notion branding that was very much so green. And just saying, all right, go for it.
Yeah, we can live with this. And that's actually interesting because Notion's brand strategy was inspired, I think I read from the MoMA and the New Yorker. So very editorial, very modern, very slick.
Artful.
I'm very artful, beauty and craft as a strategy, which I think today is even more important because I think it's one of the ways we touch our customers. But do you think that still holds in a world where we're seeing so much in terms of AI generated content? And would love your perspective on that.
Yeah, this is where I tend to get into trouble because I'm right at that crux of humans are always going to do a better job at this particular thing, but understand that there's an inevitability around what AI is going to help us do. And so I don't want to sound like a Luddite. I don't want to sound naive. But at the same time, I just see this magnetic pull that people are still having toward more authentic human developed artifacts out there in the world. I think that there's a reason why certain X essays, which we're seeing be like a bigger and bigger marketing channel, get this momentum. And so many of those are the ones that do not sound like they were generated from Claude, generated from ChatGPT. People are still craving like high fidelity. Like I just saw this campaign come out for Cosmos, which is like the gather a bunch of creative artifacts and then help you ideate on top of it. And the ad was clearly all handmade and was really about let's all still be in this tactile world together from which we should be generating our most interesting ideas. And I just think that people still really love that energy and that the marketing that reflects that is still the most successful right now.
And so from Notion, you made the jump to XYZ Ventures, and you've described your role at XYZ Ventures as totally made up role of your dreams, which I love. What made you leave operating to start investing, and what does it actually mean to be both a partner and the head of marketing at a venture fund?
Yeah, increasingly I'm seeing this role pop up. So I think that there is so much to love about how the venture ecosystem has started to see how many rich stories they can tell about the companies and the founders that they get to work with every day. And so I'm seeing a lot more people sort of in the same mold of, I want to participate on the venture side, but I also really want to be out there helping amplify what all of these incredible innovators are doing. And right now, certainly it's more heavily weighted for me on the telling amazing stories piece. XYZ in particular seemed like such a great place to be for this because it's been so involved in like the ethical and thoughtful, conscientious development of defense technology, public sector technology, which really dovetails with my USDS experience, and being able to talk about these companies who are working in those ways and still like furthering the missions of all of these very key government agencies. It just feels like a very important and like a high opportunity task.
So speaking of that, I think you bring a different angle and investment thesis to XYZ Ventures. So I'd love to hear what you are investing in right now that you think will matter most for marketing in the next 2 or 3 years.
I'll use an example of a company that I did get to invest in, which is a company called Upside. It's run by this woman, Madi Sogeti, who was one of the co-founders of Branch Metrics.
Yes, a force of nature.
Yeah, formidable, like incredibly warm, is just one of these people you absolutely want to work with. And she's building, or initially set out to build, an attribution platform that was actually going to solve the problem of marketing attribution by bringing in all of this data, all of these touch points that people have through their multi-touch funnels, and providing the clarity that they would need to figure out where to invest in order to move deals along the happy path. She has done an incredible job just adapting along the way to being like, now we can also do this. It's not really just an attribution tool. It's about taking action on top of all of this data in really smart ways and powering up, particularly the people who sit at that intersection between sales and marketing, like that RevOps team that is now of outsized importance around how do we actually move people through an increasingly, I would say, exploded funnel of options. Like, I don't think the funnel exists anymore to a large extent. It's really more of like a pinball machine, which I'm borrowing from a wise person that I know. But I'll use Upside as an example of what I like to see happen in the world from an investor's perspective, is these marketing tools that are being innovated on alongside how fast everything is changing, and equipping people with the agentic power to really understand what's going on inside of their go-to-market organizations, not just marketing, and then take action on them.
I had the opportunity to attend your launch event of Future of Marketing, which I want to dig into forward. But one of the companies that really stood out to me was a company called Plot, And they're using AI to look at all of the video content out there created by influencers and helping brands figure out where they fit in. I'd love to hear what attracted you to that company, what kind of trends and themes they represent for you. And obviously, they have an amazing female founder who I just found super compelling, but would love to get your perspective on them.
This was born directly out of what I had observed at Notion, where influencer marketing, for the first time, I think ever, made a massive difference, was like a really important marketing lever for moving up into the enterprise. Influencer can be used to convince really traditional enterprise buyers also to adopt something, a piece of software. And so seeing Plotno come along and use AI to scan the entire internet on behalf of these brands and understand through video, through audio, all of this presence on social media, where these brands are showing up, where they're finding success, what people are loving about them or not loving about them, and bring all that really valuable data back into a platform that allows these companies to act on it. Absolutely invaluable, because I really do think that community and influencer marketing is going to continue even from here to pick up momentum and be really successful on behalf of a lot of folks. And it really shows proof in the pudding, because Megan Duong, this powerhouse CEO you reference, she's been able to close these monster deals with Visa, MasterCard, State Farm, Walmart, all of these sort of unusual character brands that are now extremely intent on harnessing influencer for themselves.
Exciting. And I think it speaks to the fact that I think people are looking for hearing from peers, no matter the field, in an age where we're being bombarded with a lot of AI content, a lot of content we don't know if we can trust. That influencer component, I think, is only going to become more and more important.
People are, when they're forming their opinion of a company, of a brand, they're basically assembling a constellation of opinions at this point. Like what they encounter on Instagram and TikTok, certainly, but then what they hear from all these other touch points. I think in-person experiences around brands are suddenly popping back up again and starting to be extremely effective, because you're putting your customer in the situation to hear from others what your company has been able to do for them. And so just thinking through how to assemble all those pieces is more important than ever.
Yeah. And I think here, because you obviously experienced it and fostered this at Notion, but user-generated content becomes even more important, because as we're flooded with content that maybe customers are not going to trust, again, that user-generated voice becomes more important. Do you think it still carries that same weight, maybe more weight going forward? And how should companies think about fostering that?
I think it carries more weight. And I say that because I do think that we're all primed now to want to listen to other real, authentic users, to the extent that when we know somebody is paid, but they seem authentic, we're also like, okay, I'm interested. But I say it's more important because the new evolution of AI search and the way people are discovering brands through ChatGPT, through Claude, asking these resources, what is the best product of a certain field to buy, and them coming back with an opinion. That opinion is being assembled from how many people out there in the world are talking about it in the right way, on the right platforms. And so you really do want to create a deluge of LLM available content out there that can be read by these agents and brought back, and then shared out again to all of your potential consumers in like really positive light. I think that it's hyper critical right now, as we're at the beginning, just truly at like not even dawn. Like we're just starting to see the horizon light up when it comes to how AI is going to help with marketing.
Speaking of that, as you're sitting here as an investor and evaluating different startups that are building probably AI native, AI first, and platforms for marketers, what's the biggest gap between what founders are thinking that marketing leaders need versus the realities on the ground of what marketers are facing today.
Yeah. I mean, I think so many marketers are just feeling outsized pressure to move faster than they ever have before because the assumption is that they have all these new tools at their disposal and therefore should be able to generate incredible content much faster, should be able to make things go viral, should be able to do so much more with fewer people. And I think that we're tracking in some ways toward that future, but it's not here yet. And also, I really think that the marketing teams that are most successful are not necessarily using AI to generate the user-facing content out there, but using it to make the journey to that content more effective, more efficient. So I think a lot of my favorite marketing leader AI applications are about gathering and synthesizing more and more and more data to have at their disposal to give them an even finer barometer on what customers want and need and want to hear and want to interact with, but then actually working with other humans to make sure that whatever that content is does feel like it has the human touch still. I think that we have reached the ceiling when it comes to what AI is going to be able to do for influencer, because I don't want to buy skincare from somebody who doesn't have real skin. And I think marketing only works because we're seeing another real human being tell us that it's worked for them. And if we know that it's fake, it's just going to stop having the impact. So in that case, AI is best equipped to get the real person to say the best possible things about you, but still have them be the one saying it.
I love that. And it's been kind of the promise to marketers for a long time around marketing technology and having all these insights in your customers. And I feel like now, as you said, it will become a reality given the power of AI and then harnessing that data in a very human way that connects with your audience, that connects with your customers is going to be the power move.
Yeah. The one thing that I'll also wedge in here, and hopefully it's not too off topic, is that I think the most powerful marketing that I have ever encountered, the stuff that really has inspired me to do this type of work, all was sort of outlandish at the time. It was like the outlier, the thing that was a narrative violation, right? The thing that we all wanted to hear someone say, but didn't know we wanted to hear them say. It's sort of like the old Steve Jobsian, like, you can't go off of survey data. You can't give people what they think they want. You have to give them what they don't know they already want. And if we're using AI too much, that is going to have the effect of us converging toward a meme that already exists and is going to restrict our ability to leap ahead in those ways that are actually going to move people.
Yeah. Outlandish is novel. And it's going to take human creativity and curiosity to push towards that outlandishness and that novelty that I think we all crave.
One of the wisest people I've gotten a chance to work with is Gordon Ritter at Emergence Capital. And he had this saying, which I just really love, which is that humans are still the only real mutation engine in the world, which is we are the only ones who can walk to work, see the bay, listen to the music we're listening to, see a bird fly by, see a friend, and then take all of that and just come up with something that no one's ever thought before. And AI is not necessarily going to be able to do that. I know there's a lot of people watching this that are like, yes, it will, and maybe it will. But for now, my belief is that we are still the only remaining mutation engines that are capable of that. And that is at the root of marketing.
Yeah, I love that phrase. I'm going to adopt it. I will credit you.
All credit to Gordon.
And I will credit Gordon. Okay, I love it. Speaking of Emergence, I think both at XYZ and Emergence, you're advising marketing teams and go-to-market teams at startups who are trying to figure out kind of their strategy and their go-to-market motion. And I'm wondering how you advise between that balance of it being AI native, because that's a requirement today for a startup, but still having that soul and having that human first approach. And what companies are you seeing do that really well?
Interesting question. I think it is the companies that are able to get their marketing teams really excited about how to equip themselves with AI. like authentically excited, like, oh my God, look what we can do now, as opposed to any of these draconian, like, in your performance review, if you're not burning X amount of tokens, you're getting dinged. You're only meeting some expectations. I really think it has to come from within, and like the delight and magic you experience when something does go faster, when suddenly you feel like you do have the data that creates like an incredible output that is helpful to you as a tool. And so I think the marketing leaders that are doing this best are the ones that find a lot of authentic delight in it themselves and are constantly sharing back with their teams, like, look what we can do now. Try this thing that I just tried that worked. And I think the companies that are doing the best with that, like I'm going to just step on my own toes and say that I think Notion is the perfect example of a company that has thoroughly AI pilled itself. Like they are right now inside their company, and this is like reported from like perhaps several weeks ago, using something like 700 different agents inside the company as coworkers responsible for various tasks alongside all of like the 1,200 or so Notinos that work there. But most of it is to just go faster, understand more, but then still interface with the world from a very human perspective.
Yeah, their story is so inspiring. And I think it's the antithesis to the Klarna story, in that Klarna just moved very quickly to identify their customer success team, and whatever agents they had built and AI teammates to take care of customers weren't taught about their focus on really creating a lot of value for customers. And the customer service AI reps just were working around efficiency. And so they ended up losing some long-term customers because they felt like they weren't being treated well. Whereas Notion has really made sure the intent around how they're approaching AI, that it understands the vision, the mission. Their agents understand the mission and vision of Notion, and it is tied to a very human-centric approach of AI, which is very inspiring. I agree. We've been watching what they're doing very closely.
I think with the customer success side that you mentioned, there is so much, there's infinite possibilities that can happen when two humans interact in that context, where you're understanding where somebody is struggling. You have empathy in a way that makes them comfortable to share more with you. You can express patience. They can see the authentic excitement that comes out of you. And I think all of that is really constrained when it's a bot that's speaking to you.
Exactly.
Even if the imitation down of a human still can't do that.
So one other thread that I think is super evident in your career is not only have you been an amazing storyteller, you are an incredible community builder. And you and some of the founders you work with, including Madi, have founded this group called the Future of Marketing. This community, I will call it. And I'd love to hear more about the intention behind this community and about the podcast you've launched, because I have to say you are getting some of the most exciting CMO voices out there talking about their AI transformations in very candid ways. So I'd love to hear more about the impetus for this community as well as what your goals are for it.
Really have to credit Mada with developing this idea, and I'm lucky that I get to sort of ride along with her. But the whole idea was people are really, really struggling. Like even the best CMOs we know, the sharpest people, are feeling like they're just at the beginning of the game of like, how do I use this? What is the expectation? How do I get my team excited to use this? And so we wanted to just create a casual, friendly forum for people to come and share some of that. And I think it's helped the listeners that we now have and the community that we're now building feel normalized. And them also like, oh, I'm just at base camp and I'm now climbing, but I don't know necessarily. And it's great when you can create that kind of safe space for people. It engenders a place to play a little bit more as opposed to feel all this anxiety about what you're not doing. It becomes more about, oh, maybe I will try that thing that I heard on the podcast. We just did an incredible interview with the VP of marketing at Brain Trust, this woman, Morgan Palomares. And she was just talking with so much glee about the agents that she has doing, like out there scouting all the information you might need to bring it back for competitor battle cards, and how great that was starting to feel. And her team just being like, oh my God, look at how great this has become. And that's exactly the type of conversation we want to host in this particular forum. So it's been a great experience so far. We had the lovable CMO, CC Stallsmith on. That's an episode forthcoming. This week we have Sheila Vashi, who's the CMO of Figma, on. We're so excited about that. So we've just been really excited about the caliber of folks coming on to be honest with the audience about where they're at and what they're thinking about.
No, highly recommend. And I subscribed right away. Very excited about all the episodes. The thing that we really think about in terms of AI transformation here at Clarity in Motion is this is something that the CMO, the CEO, the whole exec suite cannot delegate. That leadership has to have hands on keyboards and actually understand the power of these strategic thought partners. I'm not even going to call it a technology. And the shift in the way we think about work has to come from their learned experience. And I was wondering who you've seen as a real leader among CMOs who's gotten their hands dirty, if A, you agree with our premise, and B, examples of really inspiring CMOs who are getting their hands dirty and really digging in.
Yeah, you truly cannot ask it of your team if you are not embedded in it yourself. So, and I also think that you can't even trust what is going on unless you see it for yourself. And I think that most of the best CMOs, like the ones that I've even just named, Sheila at Figma, CC at Lovable, and Don Coren at Verkado, which is like an interesting one because he's more in the business of hardware, Morgan at Brain Trust, all of these folks, what they have in common. We had Lena Waters, the CMO of Notion, on. All of these leaders are saying, like, I'm spending hours talking into little microphones to Whisperflow and seeing what I can do with like orchestrating all these agents at our disposal. And then we're having whole meetings. They're like fun, which is like, oh, everybody on the team demo what it is that you've been capable of doing. And so that we can all learn from each other. Like there's whole Slack channels that are being spun up where people are just like, look what I can do so that others can fork what it is and then put it to work for themselves.
I know so many marketing leaders feel like, I'm so behind. And it's really, no, we're all still, I think, jockeying at the starting line. So don't worry. And some people are moving a little more at the starting line than others. But for those who are just like, where do I start? What do you recommend to some of your portfolio companies?
I do think engaging with a lot of this content that is being put out there by the brands that you admire. Like whenever I'm advising any of these companies, I don't say like, oh, look to these people as a rule, because that might not be the type of brand they want to build. Your kindred spirit brand, the people who are often talking to your same customers, but maybe about something different, the people who embody the look, the feel, the voice, the tone that you really admire, and then try to find the content. And a lot of them are out there being very proactive on X, on podcasts, at events, being proactive about how they are starting to experiment and where they're seeing success. So only really look at the leaders who are in the vein of what you yourself want to become and see what they're up to. That would be my recommendation, because sometimes we try to port learnings from people who are very orthogonal to what it is that we value or, you know, what we want to go out there and promote in the world, and try to bring it and graft it onto our own organization only to experience organ failure. So yeah, that I hope that that's at least a little bit of an insight.
And then I always love to ask, what's a fun way you've used AI, either in your personal life or just in a fun trick you like to do when you're using AI?
Yeah, this is one that when I share it in small groups, people are like, oh, interesting. I use Claude as my personal CRM, where like I'm really big into whenever anybody in my life mentions something that they may want, being like gift idea or like, oh, next birthday. And so I'm constantly on this one thread that I have in Claude, which will soon become like many threads inside of a project, I'm sure. But be like, Nicole loves rum raisin ice cream. And then that way, when I'm like, tell me about what to do for Nicole's birthday, there's like all this stuff that Claude can tell me about, like, here's what you should do. So anybody who's like, oh, I've always dreamt of that personal CRM that'll remember everything, you have it now. You actually can have it.
Camille, this has been so amazing, and I so appreciate the time. And I think our audience is just going to really enjoy this conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to AI in Motion. If today's conversation sparked an idea, share it with your team or continue the conversation with us at Clarity in Motion Collective. We believe AI should give people and organizations clarity and momentum, not more noise. Until next time.